In the fall of 1810, a handful of armed settlers stormed a fort, raised a flag nobody had ever seen before, and declared a brand new country into existence. They called it West Florida. It had a president, a constitution, an army. It lasted 78 days, and the man who erased it had personally helped write the deal he used to do it. This is the story of the smallest country the United States ever swallowed whole. A nation born out of frustration with a crumbling Spanish empire and killed off by the very government it was begging to join. Before there was a Texas Republic, before California ever flew its own flag. There was this, the Republic of West Florida. And how it died tells you more about how America actually expanded than any map of manifest destiny ever will. To understand why this happened, you need to picture West Florida in 1810. It wasn't Florida, the state. It was a strip of Spanish land running along the Gulf Coast, covering parts of what's now Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama. Spain had owned it since 1783, but Spain barely governed it. American settlers, English-speaking, mostly former U.S. citizens chasing cheap farmland, had moved in by the thousands and become the overwhelming majority. They lived under a Spanish flag they had no loyalty to, administered by officials who often couldn't be bothered to show up. Then Spain itself fell apart. Napoleon invaded in 1808 and put his own brother on the Spanish throne. From the settlers' point of view, the empire ruling them wasn't just distant anymore. It was illegitimate. Through the summer of 1810, frustrated locals held a string of secret meetings, and a few open ones in the Baton Rouge district. They weren't dreaming of independence yet. Most of them just wanted in. They wanted the United States to finally take the territory it had been informally eyeing for years. Before dawn on September 23rd, around 75 armed settlers under a Revolutionary War veteran named Philemon Thomas moved on Fort San Carlos at Baton Rouge. The fight was short and brutal. 2 Spanish soldiers were killed defending the gate. The Spanish governor, Carlos de Old de Lasas, was captured inside. Then the rebels ran up their flag for the first time, a single white star on a blue field, hand-sewn the night before by Melissa Johnson, the wife of one of the militia officers. 50 years later, a very similar flag would fly over the first shots of the American Civil War. This one came first. 3 days later, on September 26th, the rebels formally declared independence. They set up a capital at St. Francisville, drafted a constitution modeled on the U.S. Constitution itself, and gave their new country an official name, the state of Florida. They even tried to expand. A militia officer named Reuben Kemper led a small force east to seize the Spanish post at Mobile and grow the new republic's borders. It failed completely. West Florida would stay exactly as big as that first fort and the territory around it, never more. On November 7th, the new legislature elected a governor, Fulwar Skipwith. And here's where the story gets genuinely strange. Skipwith wasn't some frontier hothead. He was a career American diplomat. Years earlier, he'd personally helped negotiate the Louisiana Purchase, the deal that defined how much territory the United States now claimed it owned. He moved to West Florida in 1809, joined the rebellion, and within a year, he was the president of a country resisting annexation by the same nation whose biggest land deal he'd helped seal. Here's the detail most people miss. West Florida's Constitutional Convention wrapped up its work on October 27, 1810. That same day, October 27th, U.S. President James Madison signed a proclamation claiming West Florida belonged to America all along as part of the Louisiana Purchase. There was just one problem. It wasn't true. Madison's proclamation quoted the actual 1800 treaty between France and Spain, except he quietly inserted one word, originally, that doesn't exist anywhere in the real document. That single word was doing all the legal work. Without it, his claim falls apart. West Florida didn't want to fight. They wanted to join the Union on their own terms, as a state, with their land titles respected. Madison wasn't offering terms. He was sending troops. Governor Skipwith refused to back down quietly. He vowed that he and his men would, in his words, surround the Flagstaff and die in its defense. On December 6th, U.S. troops under William Claiborne marched into St. Francisville. The capital fell without a shot. The final holdouts retreated to the fort at Baton Rouge. On December 9th, Skipwith told the Americans he personally wouldn't resist further. But he couldn't speak for the soldiers still inside the fort. Those troops were commanded by a man named John Ballinger. The next day, December 10th, at 2:30 in the afternoon, Ballinger's men marched out, stacked their weapons, and saluted their Lone Star flag one final time as it came down. Then they walked away. No battle, no surrender ceremony with cannons. Just a flag, lowered, and 78 days of independence quietly ending. Today, the land that was West Florida makes up Louisiana's Florida parishes, a name that still nods to a country most Americans have never heard of. The original Constitution sits in the Louisiana State Archives. A stretch of Interstate 12 is officially named the Republic of West Florida Parkway. And that Lone Star flag Melissa Johnson sewed in 1810? It became the template for the Bonnie Blue flag, the unofficial banner Southern states raised 50 years later at the start of the Civil War. West Florida wasn't conquered. It wasn't bought. It talked itself into existence. And then a sitting president quietly rewrote a treaty to make it disappear, 78 days after it began. It's a smaller, stranger echo of what we saw with the Kingdom of Hawaii, a story America doesn't tell about itself, where the paperwork mattered more than the truth. There are dozens more vanished countries like this one, kingdoms, republics, and borders the world has quietly forgotten. Subscribe, and we'll see you at the next one.